In early 2002, police in Yorkshire were confronted with a horrifying discovery: the body of a young Korean woman hidden in a metal suitcase. This discovery sparked an investigation that ultimately led to the arrest of one of the worst criminals in the country's history. Kyu Seo, born in South Korea in the 1970s. Little is known about his family and life. It is only known that after an unhappy marriage, in September 2000, he decided to leave his native country and went to London to study English in the capital of Great Britain. However, in October 2001, he interrupted his studies and decided to support himself by renting out 2 residential properties, one on Eagle Street, near Holborn, known as London's legal district, and a duplex on Gasta Street in Poplar. To expand his business, Kim advertised his apartments for rent on various websites. Most of his tenants were foreign students, many of whom, like himself, were Korean. At the time, Kim was in a relationship with a girl named Marika Ishimura, a young Japanese woman who worked as a hairdresser. They lived in the master bedroom of an apartment on Eagle Street, while the other 2 rooms were rented by Korean students. Those who knew Kim often described him as a kind, polite, and helpful person who was always smiling. His charm amazed everyone, but especially young girls. Somehow, he managed to convince people that he came from a wealthy family and was in a fairly comfortable financial situation. But all this was just an illusion. In fact, Kim was in serious financial difficulties. He had a lot of debt, and all his credit accounts were cancelled. Moreover, he and Marika often used illegal substances. By October 2001, their relationship was in decline, and Marika, who was almost 10 years younger than Kim, almost never appeared in the apartment. It was during this period that Kim met Jin Hyo-jang, a girl from South Korea who rented his apartment for a short period of time, just 3 days. Jean studied French literature at a Korean university and spent several months in Lyon as an exchange student before returning home to her brothers and parents. Jean arrived in the UK capital on October 24, 2001, with the intention of returning to France on October 27. I found Kim through his online ad for a room for rent on Eagle Street, but her plans were cruelly disrupted, and her short life ended in a terrible and unexpected way on the night of October 26, just a day before her expected return to France. The 21-year-old girl was the victim of a brutal attack by Kim. The details of what happened remained undisclosed, but it is known that when they were alone, the man killed Jean by wrapping her face with tape, which led to suffocation. He also tied her wrists. Before subjecting her to abuse, Kim forced Jean to give him the passwords to her credit cards, which he intended to use in the future. He then hid it in an iron suitcase in the master bedroom closet, where he kept it for 5 days. When other residents returned to the apartment on Friday, they asked where Jean was. The man replied that she had left for France ahead of schedule, and he took her to the station. He told a similar story, with slight differences, to the girl's friends and family, who began to worry when Jean did not arrive in France at the appointed time and seemed to go missing. A day after he committed the terrible crime, Kim took 2 of his victims' cards and began to clean out her bank accounts. He first tried to use the Korean Kookmin Bank card, which was a family account that Jin's parents had opened for emergencies and which she had never used. The first attempt was unsuccessful, as the man entered the wrong PIN code for the card. But a few days later Kim tried again and withdrew £1,990. The man wanted to withdraw more money, but Jean's family account was already empty. The man gave this card to a young Korean woman, whom he asked to go to Paris and withdraw the maximum possible amount from her. Although this should have raised suspicion, Kim made up a story that the card belonged to Marika, his girlfriend, and explained why he needed the money in Paris. Apparently, his excuse seemed plausible enough for the girl to agree to fulfill his request. In fact, everything was much worse. Kim not only wanted to take all of his victims' money, but also tried to confirm his story that Jean had gone to Paris. To do this, he needed to create the appearance that the girl used her card in the French capital. He wanted to confuse the authorities, who would undoubtedly soon begin an investigation into the student's sudden disappearance. Late on the evening of Wednesday, October 31st, Kim took the suitcase containing Jin's body and placed it in the trunk of the rental car. He then drove almost 4 hours to the village of Ask in North Yorkshire. There, on the side of a rural road, he dumped the suitcase containing Jean's body and then returned to the apartment. Kim continued to live as if nothing had happened, He rented out rooms and repeated the same excuses every time someone the victim knew asked about her. Between November 17th and 18th, a young Korean woman named Song In-hyo moved into Kim's duplex on Gasta Street. At first she shared the master bedroom with a friend named Moon. But a few days later, when Moon flew back to Korea, her friend was left to live alone in the apartment. Everyone who met Song spoke of her as a friendly and cheerful girl, whom the family considered an exemplary daughter. However, little was known about her education. According to some reports, she studied in London with a degree in hotel management. According to others, she came from a Korean university to study English. While living in the duplex, Song and Kim became friends and became very close. But no one knew for sure whether they were in a romantic or sexual relationship. Some witnesses to their interactions compared them to brother and sister. Song told her friend that she thought Kim was attracted to her, but never said that she responded in kind. However, on December 3, 2001, Kim asked everyone to move out of the Eagle Street apartment, including Marika, with whom he was no longer in a relationship. Then he left the apartment himself and moved into the duplex on Augusta Street, where Song lived. Over the next few days they were very close. But the girl felt that under the mask of a kind man was hiding a terrible beast. Song was last seen alive on December 7th, when she had lunch at a Korean restaurant with Kim. She had no idea what a terrible ending awaited her in the near future. Kim did to Song the same thing he did to Jean a few months ago. He taped her arms and legs together, then covered her mouth and nose with a sock and sealed them. The 22-year-old girl died of suffocation. Experiencing a slow and terrible death, Kim, following his usual plan, obtained his victim's bank information before killing her. He then hid the body in a closet in the hallway of the duplex and sealed it so no one could open it. Song's body lay there for several months. When the girl's friends asked about her, Kim said that she got a job at a hotel where she was given accommodation. Song had 2 bank accounts, one with Nast and the other with Korean Kmin Bank, which was a family emergency account that she only used once. Kim withdrew £240 from his Nast card from an ATM and used it to buy a ticket to Toronto, Canada on December 13th. Before leaving, Kim stole another £1,200 from the girl's Korean card. Kim got to Toronto without any problems and rented an apartment there, where he continued to rent out rooms in the same way as in London. The man planned to live in Canada for a year or two and hoped that he would not be found for these 2 terrible crimes. Kim lived as if nothing had happened after he killed Jean and hid her body in a suitcase. But the story wasn't over yet, because Jean's family and friends continued to search for her when she didn't return from England on time. Her friends in France contacted her family in Korea but were unable to find her. Her brother posted information about Jean on a Korean missing persons website. There she was seen by a Korean policeman who was studying in London. He became interested that she was one of the many missing, because a few days ago the news reported the discovery of the dead body of a young Asian or Oriental woman in a suitcase. This terrible incident happened on November 18th. However, it later became known that the suitcase was noticed 2 weeks ago, but since it was a rural area with a small population, no one reported it to the authorities until one local resident decided to take the suitcase with him. When he couldn't lift it, he felt something was wrong. The police arrived at the scene at night and, shining a flashlight on the suitcase, saw human hair and eyes. The suitcase with its terrible contents was taken to the morgue, where it was finally opened. There they found the body of an almost naked girl in a bra. Her height was a little more than 150 centimeters. She had tape wrapped around her head and limbs. Authorities immediately noticed the unusual nature of the tape that was wrapped around it. It was decorative tape in dark blue with a print of men's faces. They soon discovered that it was tape created by London artists Gilbert and George. It was released in September 2000 and was sold exclusively at the UK branches of the Tate Gallery in London, Liverpool and Cornwall. Authorities learned that only 850 pieces of this tape were sold. This information will become very important for the investigation. When the pathologist examined the body, he was surprised that there were no injuries indicating resistance. He concluded that the victim was likely paralyzed in some way before her head was wrapped. He put forward 2 possibilities. The first was that the girl was injected with some substance that the toxicology test did not show, and the second was that the victim was forced or convinced to allow her wrists to be tied. The pathologist's report began with a hair analysis that confirmed the victim was from Southeast Asia, but police were unable to determine her identity based on fingerprints and teeth. It wasn't until January 2, 2002 that they were able to establish who she was, after Korean police who saw Jean missing and a body found in a suitcase contacted Yorkshire police to inform them of a possible connection. The police contacted the Korean embassy and gained access to the fingerprint database of the South Korean population. They then identified the victim as Jean Hyo-yoon. A little earlier, on December 18, 2001, friends put Song In-hyo on the wanted list, with whom they could not contact. On January 7, 2002, the Metropolitan Police's Serious Crime Unit learned of the discovery of Jean's body and thought the cases might be linked. Therefore, police and Yorkshire detectives conducted a joint investigation under the direction of Chief Constable Nanker. Song was initially reported missing, but her body was never found. Information received from friends and family of the deceased Jean helped officers investigate her case. They were able to track the girl's movements until she ended up at the Eagle Street apartments. There, authorities found the same tape that was used to bind and strangle Jean. On the tape, as well as on the baseboards, walls, sofa and carpet in the room, forensic scientists found traces of the blood of a young Korean woman. Regarding Song's disappearance, police knew that she lived as a renter in a house on Gasta Street. After investigating both this house and the house on Eagle Street, Kyu Seo, who managed both houses where Jean and Song lived, was in Canada at the time. Officers analyzed the man's phone calls and determined he was in North Yorkshire, where the suitcase was found. An inspection of the car, which Kim rented in October 2001, also revealed blood stains on Jean. All the evidence suggested that the victims were related, and authorities had a prime suspect. On January 17, 2002, the Metropolitan Police, together with North Yorkshire Police, held a press conference asking for any information about the two girls. But fate decreed that Kim returned to London for a short time and was detained that same evening in an internet cafe. He was charged with the murder of Jean Hyo-jang. He was immediately arrested on January 21 and appeared before the magistrate's court, where his defense counsel sought bail. But the court refused and remanded the defendant in custody until his trial scheduled for the 28th of the same month. But as usually happens, the trial date was postponed to a later time. While the investigation into Song's disappearance was ongoing, on March 14, 2002, a worker named Paul Mee was renovating the bathroom of a two-story house on Gasta Street when he saw many flies flying from one of the panels. This made the man suspicious and he notified the authorities. Police arrived at the house the next day and found a sealed closet in the hallway. Inside was a pile of smelly clothes, and behind it was the naked body of a girl, wrapped in a sheet. It was later revealed that it was Song In-hyo. Police had already been to the duplex on January 9, 2002, as part of the initial investigation, but at that time they only found clothing that belonged to the first victim. The officers did not pay attention to the closet where the second body was hidden. It soon became known that the decorative ribbon that was wrapped around Song's face, wrists, and ankles matched that worn by the first victim. In this case, the lower part of the face was compressed. It is worth noting that none of the victims showed signs of sexual violence. After DNA analysis of substances found in the closet, it became known that several items, including clothes and shoes, belonged to Jean. On April 4, 2002, Kim was charged with Song's murder and sent to the Central Court on May 7 to confess. At this meeting, Kyu Seo, through an interpreter, stated that he was not guilty of the deaths of Jean Hyo-young and Song In-hyo. The court scheduled a hearing for September 30 of the same year, but the accused did not appear in court until March 2003. Kim refused to answer questions during cross-examination and did not give any testimony. Defendant Kim's son admitted to a jury that he accidentally killed two women during an erotic game that ended in tragedy, but the court did not accept his words as truth and decided to continue hearing the case. Kyu Seo was unable to give a satisfactory answer to the question of why he committed these crimes. Prosecutor John Dan Lidiello suggested that the defendant could have been driven to this by sexual or financial problems, since Kim was in large debts. He also stated that the man may have enjoyed the gradual and brutal killing of both girls. The prosecutor focused on the horror that both victims experienced in the last moments of their lives. Also testifying was forensic scientist Christopher Murray, who was part of the team that examined the bodies of the murdered girls. He said he had never encountered a killing method like Kim's. After this, Marika Ishimura, the former lover of the accused, testified. She said that the decorative tape used to commit the crimes belonged to her, and that she bought it from the Tate Gallery in London for special occasions. Kim Joon-gun, a friend of the defendant, then spoke. He told jurors that in late 2001 he accompanied him on a purchase of a suitcase that Kim said was needed for his girlfriend's belongings. However, the witness said that in the end they didn't buy any because they were too expensive. Ultimately, on March 25, 2003, Kyu Seo was found guilty by a court of murder of 2 young female students and sentenced to 2 life sentences. The judge, having announced the verdict, addressed the defendant and called his crimes extremely cruel. He said that Kim had taken the lives of 2 innocent people who believed in him and were his friends, and that he had done it with extreme cruelty, which undoubtedly caused unbearable agony to the victims. Friends, write your opinion in the comments, and also subscribe to the channel and watch my other videos. Thank you all.